The rain-slicked windshield blurred the taillights of the pickup truck ahead. But Diana Hayes gripped the steering wheel tighter, her heart slamming against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Pick up, damn it," she muttered, jabbing the phone icon on her dashboard. The call connecting just as thunder cracked overhead. Ellis Ford's voice sliced through the static, sharp and unyielding. "Diana, get back here now, the client's tearing the office apart, and you're the only one who can calm him down." It was the 4th time this month, the lie as thin as the humid Georgia air. And as Diana whipped the car around toward the dim glow of downtown Eldridge, she wondered if the ache in her chest was fury or something far more dangerous. Eldridge, Georgia, clung to the edge of the Savannah River like a forgotten heirloom. Its streets lined with shotgun houses painted in fading pastels and grand oaks dripping with Spanish moss that whispered secrets no one dared repeat. Diana had grown up here, daughter of a hardware store owner whose Sunday sermons at First Baptist echoed louder than his cash register, and a mother who baked pecan pies for the church socials while quietly mending the hems of her neighbors' prejudices. At 28, she managed accounts at Whitaker Mills, a textile plant that had outlasted 2 world wars but now teetered on the brink of automation, its looms humming like the collective sigh of a town unwilling to change. Her days blurred into spreadsheets and coffee runs, but her nights, those were meant for escape, for the tentative swipes on apps that promised something beyond the mill's fluorescent hum. The first sabotage had been subtle, almost forgivable. It was with Marcus, the affable mechanic from the garage on Peach Street, whose laugh crinkled the corners of his eyes like well-worn leather. They'd met at the Driftwood, Eldridge's lone dive bar where neon signs flickered over peanut shells and the jukebox spun Patsy Cline on repeat. Diana had slipped into a sundress that hugged her just enough to feel alive, her hair loose for once, carrying the faint scent of magnolias from her backyard. Marcus had ordered her a gin and tonic, his hand brushing hers as he passed the glass, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the spark in his gaze, the easy rhythm of small talk about carburetors and her love for the river's lazy bend. Then her phone buzzed on the scarred wooden table. Ellis Ford, her coworker of 3 years, the one with the sharp bob and sharper tongue who handled sales like a general marshalling troops. "Emergency," the text read, followed by a photo of a stack of invoices teetering like dominoes. Diana sighed, excusing herself to the dim hallway by the restrooms, where the air smelled of stale beer and regret. She called Ellis back, voice low. "What is it this time?" "The Harlan account." Ellis's reply was all efficiency, laced with that undercurrent of steel Diana had come to rely on. "Worse. The bank's on the line, threatening to pull funding if we don't square it tonight. You're the numbers wizard, D. Marcus can wait." He had waited 40 minutes nursing his beer until it went flat, before Diana rushed back, flushed and apologetic, the evening dissolving into a polite handshake under the bar's awning as rain began to patter. She'd laughed it off later, over microwave dinners in her cramped apartment above the bookstore on Elm, telling herself it was just work bleeding into life, the mill's demands as relentless as the tide. Ellis was like that. A force, the woman who quoted Faulkner during lunch breaks and volunteered at the food pantry on Saturdays, her presence a steady anchor in the chaos of quotas and layoffs. They'd bonded over late nights reconciling ledgers, sharing takeout from Miss Etta's Soul Food Shack, Ellis's dry wit cutting through Diana's exhaustion like a cool breeze off the water. "You're too good for this place," Ellis had said once, her eyes lingering a beat too long on Diana's face, the words hanging like smoke. Diana had brushed it aside, chalking it up to camaraderie, the kind that bloomed in small towns where options were few and loyalties fierce. But the second time, with Theo from the University Extension office in nearby Brunswick, it stung deeper. Theo was different, bookish, with a collection of vintage cameras and stories of travels Diana could only dream of, his voice soft as he described the salt marshes at dusk. They'd planned a picnic by the river, blankets spread under the willows, the air thick with the promise of cicadas and stolen glances. Diana arrived early, basket in hand with deviled eggs and sweet tea, her pulse quickening at the thought of hands brushing over checkered cloth, of laughter echoing off the current. The call came as Theo unpacked his thermos, Ellis's number flashing like a warning flare. "Diana, it's bad," she said, her breath ragged as if she'd run the length of the mill floor. "Your father's in the ER, slipped on the warehouse steps. They need you to authorize the release forms." Panic clawed at Diana's throat. Her father, Harlan Hayes, was the stubborn heart of the town, his limp from an old logging accident a badge he wore with pride. She bolted, leaving Theo with apologies tumbling like gravel, the picnic abandoned to ants and afternoon shadows. It turned out to be nothing. A sprained ankle from a misstep on wet concrete, Harlan grumbling from his hospital bed about damn safety regs, while Diana hovered, guilt twisting in her gut. Ellis met her there, coffee in hand, her face pale under the harsh lights. "I heard from the shift lead," she explained, handing over the styrofoam cup. "Thought you'd want to know right away." Gratitude warred with suspicion as Diana thanked her, the warmth of the coffee seeping through the cup like a hesitant touch. Theo texted later, "Rain check?" But the spark had dimmed, and when they rescheduled, it ended in awkward silences over diner fries, the river's whisper mocking her solitude. By the third date with Lena from the art co-op in Savannah, a whirlwind of tattoos and poetry readings, Diana felt the pattern etching into her skin like invisible ink. Lena was electric, her stories of gallery openings and midnight sketches pulling Diana from the mill's gray pallor into a world of color and possibility. They met at a cafe overlooking the squares, where wrought iron balconies dripped with bougainvillea and the air hummed with jazz from a street busker. Diana leaned in, captivated, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass as Lena spoke of light bending through stained glass. The interruption was a voicemail this time, played on speaker in the cafe's hushed corner. Ellis, voice trembling with feigned composure. "Dee, it's me. The audit team's here unannounced. IRS, can you believe it? They're combing through your files and without you." Diana's stomach dropped, visions of audits and subpoenas flashing like lightning. She apologized profusely, Lena's understanding smile a fragile bridge as Diana flagged down the waiter for the check. The drive back to Eldridge was a blur of headlights and self-recrimination, the mill's gates looming like jaws as she pulled in at midnight. Ellis was waiting in the conference room, papers strewn like fallen leaves, her sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled. "False alarm," she admitted when Diana burst through the door breathless. "Just a routine check, but I panicked. Didn't want you blindsided." Relief flooded Diana, chased by a flicker of irritation she swallowed down. They worked side by side until dawn, the fluorescent buzz a cocoon against the night, Ellis's shoulder brushing hers in the narrow space. "You're a lifesaver," Diana said, exhaustion softening her edges. Ellis smiled, faint and fleeting. "Couldn't do it without you." Weeks blurred into a rhythm of near misses and salvaged evenings, Diana's dating profile gathering digital dust, while her inbox overflowed with blind setups from well-meaning aunts. The town watched with its usual mix of pity and prurience. Eldridge thrived on whispers, from the country club's hushed judgments to the barbershop tall tales. Diana's mother, Clara, cornered her one Sunday after potluck, her floral apron still dusted with flour. "Honey, you're blooming like a widow's rose, beautiful but alone. What's holding you back?" Diana forced a laugh, blaming the mill, the economy, anything but the shadow of doubt lengthening behind her. It was during a rare quiet shift, rain drumming on the tin roof like impatient fingers, that Diana first voiced the question aloud. Ellis was at the copier, jamming paper with mechanical precision, her back rigid. "You ever wonder why my luck's so rotten?" Diana asked, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. Ellis paused, the machine's whine fading to a hum. "Bad timing," she replied, not turning. "Or maybe the wrong men." The words landed soft as a confession, and Diana felt the air thicken, charged with the unsaid. She pushed off the frame, grabbing her jacket. "Yeah, maybe." That night, alone in her apartment, the walls papered in faded wallpaper from a bygone renovation, Diana scrolled through old photos, graduation smiles with Ellis in the background, arms linked at the company picnic, her face alight with a joy Diana hadn't noticed then. The realization crept in slow, insidious as kudzu. Ellis's interruptions weren't accidents. They were lifelines thrown not to save Diana from heartbreak, but to tether her close. The thought twisted sweet and sour in her chest, a forbidden fruit from the garden of what-ifs. She set the phone down, the screen's glow casting shadows that danced like ghosts, and for the first time, the silence felt like an invitation. The mill's whistle pierced the dawn like a reluctant alarm, pulling Diana from a sleep fractured by dreams of tangled sheets and hands that vanished at dawn. She dressed in the half-light, buttoning her blouse with fingers that still trembled from the night's revelations, the mirror reflecting a woman on the cusp. Eyes shadowed, lips pressed thin against the tide of questions. Eldridge stirred awake around her. Pickup trucks rumbling down Magnolia Lane. The bakery's ovens exhaling the scent of cornbread that mingled with the river's briny tang. By the time she reached Whitaker Mills, the parking lot was a patchwork of rusting Fords and polished sedans, the divide between blue-collar shifts and the front office as stark as the class lines etched into the town's soil. Ellis was already at her desk, fingers flying over the keyboard, her posture a fortress of focus. Diana paused in the doorway, coffee cup warm in her hand, the steam curling like unspoken words. "Morning," she said, voice steady despite the flutter in her throat. Lunch found them at their usual spot, the break room's formica tables scarred from years of elbows and spilled soup. Diana picked at her turkey sandwich, the bread dry as doubt, while Ellis recounted a story from the pantry drive. An old widow who'd clutched her canned goods like treasures, tears streaking her lined face. "Makes you think," Ellis said, her fork pausing midair. "How fragile it all is. One wrong turn and you're adrift." Diana nodded, the words resonating deeper than intended, her mind flashing to Theo's abandoned picnic, Marcus's fading text thread. "Speaking of wrong turns," she ventured, keeping her tone light, "I've been meaning to ask, those emergencies. The ER call, the audit scare. Coincidence?" Ellis's fork clattered softly against her plate, the sound amplified in the empty room. She met Diana's eyes unflinching. "What if they're not?" The admission hung there, raw and unadorned, the fluorescent light casting Ellis's features in stark relief. Cheekbones honed by sleepless nights, a jaw set against the world's judgments. Diana's breath caught, the sandwich forgotten, as Ellis leaned forward, voice dropping to a murmur. "I see you, Dee. Chasing shadows in those dates, coming back hollow-eyed. And every time it guts me, knowing I could be the one to fill that space." The words spilled like rain off eaves, urgent and unfiltered, painting a history Diana hadn't seen. Stolen glances over quarterly reports, the way Ellis lingered after shifts to walk her to the car, the quiet fury in her eyes when Diana mentioned a new match. "You're the steady in my storm," Ellis continued, her hand inching across the table, fingertips brushing the edge of Diana's napkin. "And losing that? I'd burn this town down first." Diana pulled back, not from revulsion but from the vertigo of it all. The chasm between the Ellis she knew, the reliable colleague with a laugh like cracked ice, and this woman whose confession cracked open doors long bolted shut. Eldridge wasn't kind to deviations. The church youth group still whispered about Miss Harlan's roommate from the 80s, and the country club blacklist was longer than the guest list. Diana's own family, with their pew-polished morals and expectations of a ring by 30, would see it as a betrayal, a stain on the Hayes name deeper than any mill debt. Yet in that moment, with the vending machine humming its indifferent tune, a spark ignited, curiosity laced with a hunger she'd named only in dreams. They didn't speak of it again that day, the afternoon dissolving into a flurry of emails and a client call that dragged into overtime. But as the sun dipped low, painting the river in strokes of crimson and gold, Diana found herself lingering by Ellis's desk, the office emptying around them like a tide receding. "Walk with me?" Ellis asked, shrugging into her cardigan, the wool soft-worn from years of wear. Diana hesitated, then nodded, the door clicking shut behind them with a finality that echoed in her bones. The streets of Eldridge unfolded under street lamps flickering to life, the air cooling to a balm against their skin. They wandered without direction, past the boarded-up theater where Diana had watched her first kiss unfold on screen, silver and safe, and the park where swing sets creaked empty under the moon. Ellis spoke in fragments, her childhood in the hollows outside town, a father lost to the bottle, a mother who taught her to fight with words instead of fists. "I learned early," she said, kicking a pebble into the gutter, "that wanting what you can't have is the real thief." Diana listened, her own stories surfacing unbidden. The weight of being the good daughter, the Hayes legacy of quiet endurance, the dates that felt like auditions for a role she no longer wanted. They paused by the riverbank, the water's murmur a confessor's hush, fireflies winking like hesitant stars. Ellis turned to her, the moonlight silvering her profile. "Tell me to stop," she whispered, close enough that Diana could smell the faint lavender of her soap. "And I will." But Diana didn't. Instead, she reached out, her hand finding Ellis's in the dark, the contact a jolt that traveled bone deep. Their fingers laced, tentative at first, then sure, the world narrowing to the press of palm against palm, the shared rhythm of breath syncing like a secret code. The kiss came unbidden, Ellis's lips brushing Diana's in a question that demanded no answer. Soft, searching, tasting of salt and surrender. Diana melted into it, the river's edge blurring as years of restraint unraveled in that single, shattering moment. It was revelation and ruin intertwined, the thrill of transgression laced with the terror of consequence. When they parted, foreheads touching, Ellis's voice was a ragged thread. "I've waited so long." Diana's reply was a nod, her heart a wild thing finally loosed, but in the quiet aftermath, doubt crept in like fog off the water. What price for this freedom, in a town that measured worth in whispers and wedding bands? Back home, Diana lay awake, the ceiling fan stirring memories into eddies. Ellis's hand in hers, the warmth that promised more than any date's polite fade. But dawn brought clarity's edge, the mirror reflecting not just fatigue but a fracture. How to navigate this pull against the gravity of expectation? At the mill, their glances lingered, charged with complicity, but the workaday veil held, fragile as tissue. Yet the undercurrent swelled, pulling Diana toward depths she both craved and feared, the first ripples of a storm that would soon break over Eldridge's complacent shores. The following weeks unfolded like a reel slowed to savor every frame. Each day at Whitaker Mills a delicate dance of stolen touches and coded glances. Diana arrived early now, her coffee brewed with an extra shot for the buzz that matched her pulse, positioning her desk to catch Ellis's silhouette against the window, the light haloing her like a reluctant saint. Conversations wove through the mundane, fabric yields, vendor delays, but laced with subtext, a brush of knees under the conference table sending sparks up Diana's spine, Ellis's foot hooking hers in silent claim. It was intoxicating, this clandestine bloom, a romance scripted in the margins of ledgers and lunch breaks, where every shared laugh felt like defiance. Yet the world outside the office walls pressed in, unyielding as the mill's iron gates. Diana's mother called midweek, her voice syrup-sweet over the line. "Darling, the ladies' auxiliary is planning the harvest fair. Your father's donating the banners, but we need volunteers. And perhaps a plus one." The implication hung, heavy with the scent of pot roast and propriety, Clara's hope for grandchildren a subtle siege. Diana demurred, citing overtime, but the guilt lingered, a stone in her stomach as she hung up, Ellis's concerned gaze from across the room a balm and a burden. "Family?" Ellis asked later, over vending machine chips in the stairwell, the concrete cool against Diana's back. "Always," Diana sighed, leaning into the space between them, Ellis's arm slipping around her waist in a hold that spoke of solidarity and something fiercer. Their evenings carved out pockets of stolen time. Drives along the back roads where peanut fields stretched like green seas under harvest moons, windows down to let the night air scour away the day's residue. One such night they parked by an abandoned pier, the river lapping at pilings like a lover's murmur, and Ellis unpacked a thermos of spiked cider, her hand steady despite the tremor in her voice. "I used to come here as a kid," she confessed, passing the cup, steam rising like ghosts, "dreaming of places where folks don't stare if you love wrong." Diana sipped, the burn chasing the chill, and traced the scars on Ellis's knuckles. Fights won in dimly lit bars, defenses raised against slurs hurled like stones. "Wrong?" she echoed, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. Ellis's laugh was bitter, edged with old wounds. "To them, yeah. But to me? It's the only truth I've got." In that shadowed intimacy, barriers crumbled further. Diana spoke of her own fractures. The high school crush on Josie Reeves, dismissed as just friends in the girls' bathroom mirror. The college flirtations buried under sorority mixers and safe frat boy dances. "I thought it was a phase," she admitted, head on Ellis's shoulder, the wool of her jacket rough against her cheek. "Something to outgrow, like these small-town blues." Ellis turned, cupping Diana's face, her thumbs brushing away tears that hadn't yet fallen. "Phases end. This is the map you've been drawing all along." Their kiss deepened there, urgent against the truck's bench seat, hands mapping uncharted territories with a reverence born of famine. It was messy, fervent, the peers creak a chorus to their unraveling, bodies speaking what words still faltered. But ecstasy's afterglow sharpened the edges of reality. The next morning, gossip slithered into the mill like smoke under doors, whispers from the loading dock about that Ford girl and her ways, eyes sliding toward Ellis during the morning huddle, the foreman's joke about diversity hires landing like lead. Diana felt it viscerally, a flush creeping up her neck as she defended a minor discrepancy in the logs, her voice pitched too high. Ellis caught her after, in the supply closet amid reams of paper that smelled of dust and discretion. "Don't let them in," she murmured, backing Diana against the shelves, her body a shield. "We're ghosts to them, unseen until we scare." But Diana saw the cost in Ellis's tightened jaw, the way her hands clenched when the break room TV droned on about traditional values in the midterms. The fracture widened at the harvest fair, Eldridge's annual ritual of fried pies and fiddles under strung lights, where the town's pulse beat in time with the square dance calls. Diana's father insisted, his arm linked through hers as they strolled the midway, Harlan's limp more pronounced in the crowd's press. "Proud of you, girl," he rumbled, nodding at the mill's booth where Ellis manned the raffle tickets, her smile professional as polished brass. Clara hovered nearby, introducing Diana to Cousin Ray's boy from Atlanta, a banker with a firm handshake and eyes that appraised like inventory. "Charming," Clara cooed later, over cotton candy that stuck to her fingers. "Isn't he?" Diana mumbled agreement, her gaze drifting to Ellis across the green, their eyes locking in a moment of electric silence, the distance between them vast as the fairground sprawl. That night, alone in the truck on the way home, Harlan cleared his throat, the engine's rumble underscoring his words. "Heard talk, D. About Ellis. Old talk, but it sticks." His eyes stayed on the road, knuckles white on the wheel. "Town's got long memories. You watch yourself." The warning landed like a slap, not of accusation but of sorrow, the weight of legacy pressing Diana into the seat. She nodded, throat tight, the fair's lights fading in the rearview like dying embers. Confrontation brewed that Sunday, after church, where the sermon's fire and brimstone on deviations from the path echoed in Diana's ears like judgment. She met Ellis at the River House, a sagging cottage Ellis rented on stilts over the marsh, its porch cluttered with dog-eared novels and wind chimes that sang in the breeze. They sat on the glider, knees touching, the water's lap a counterpoint to the tension coiling in Diana's chest. "My father knows," she said finally, the words bursting free. "Not everything, but enough. And the looks at the fair, it's starting." Ellis's face hardened, then softened, her hand finding Diana's. "Let it start. I've weathered worse." But Diana pulled away, pacing the warped boards. "Worse for you, maybe. But me? I'm the good Hayes girl. This could break them. Break me in their eyes." The argument unfurled slow at first, words like embers flaring. Ellis accusing Diana of hiding, Diana retorting with the mill's payroll, her mother's fragile health, the town's invisible chains. "It's not just us," Diana pleaded, voice cracking. "It's everything we stand to lose." Ellis rose, closing the distance, her grip on Diana's arms fierce. "What we lose if we don't fight. That's the real chain." The kiss that followed was battle-scarred, desperate, a clash of need and fear that left them breathless, tangled on the rug amid scattered cushions. In the quiet that followed, bodies spent and souls raw, Diana whispered, "I don't know how to do this." Ellis's reply was a vow against her skin. "Together." Yet doubt's shadow lengthened, the fair's echoes mingling with new rumors. A layoff rumor tied to distractions in sales, eyes narrowing at Ellis during shifts. Diana felt the pull of twin loyalties, the romance's fire testing against the forge of convention, the first cracks in their fragile idyll hinting at tempests yet to come. Winter crept into Eldridge on the heels of Thanksgiving, the air sharpening to a bite that stripped the oaks bare, their branches clawing at skies heavy with promise of frost. The mill adjusted to holiday slowdowns, shifts shortening like days, but tension coiled tighter within its walls, the hum of machines underscoring the undercurrent of unease. Diana and Ellis navigated it with practiced subtlety, notes slipped into jacket pockets, coded texts about inventory checks that meant meet me at the boathouse, but the thrill had edged into wariness, every glance a risk calculated against the town's growing scrutiny. It was the layoff notice that ignited the spark. Pinned to the bulletin board one gray Monday, it listed names in stark black ink. 5 from production, 2 from admin, and Ellis's scrawled at the bottom like a signature on a death warrant. Diana saw it first, her coffee spilling hot across her fingers as she scanned the list, the burn a distant echo to the ice in her veins. She found Ellis in the break room, staring at the vending machine as if it held prophecies, her reflection fractured in the glass. "It's a mistake," Diana said, voice low, urgent. "The numbers don't add up. I'll talk to Mr. Whitaker." Ellis turned, her smile a brittle thing. "Save your breath, Dee. It's not the books. It's me." The accusation settled like silt, stirring up truths neither had voiced. Over the next days, whispers solidified into barbs. A foreman's offhand remark about personal conduct during the team meeting, a client's email CC to HR questioning Ellis's professionalism after a tense call. Diana pieced it together in stolen moments, old grudges from Ellis's bar days resurfacing, amplified by their proximity, the town's moral compass swinging toward expulsion. At night, in the river house's narrow bed, Ellis's body tensed against hers, confessions spilling in the dark. "I pushed too hard once in Brunswick. Dated a girl from the college. Nothing serious, but her daddy owned half the county. Cost me a job, friends. Thought I'd learned." Diana held her closer, the sheets a tent against the world, but sleep evaded, replaced by visions of Ellis packing boxes, the mill's gates closing behind her like a sentence. Defiance bloomed in response. Diana cornered Whitaker in his oak-paneled office, the air thick with cigar smoke and cologne, her pitch for Ellis's retention laced with data and desperation. "She's our top closer," she argued, charts trembling in her grip. "Losing her tanks Q1. He leaned back, eyes appraising over steepled fingers. "Numbers are one thing, Diana. Optics another. Folks talk about her lifestyle. And now with you two thick as thieves." The implication landed like a gut punch, his gaze sliding away as if ashamed of the mirror he held. Diana left with assurances vague as fog, the corridor stretching endless to her desk, where Ellis waited with a forced calm. What did he say? Diana relayed the half-truths, omitting the personal slant, but Ellis's laugh was hollow. Optics. Code for queer. The strain seeped into their sanctuary. One evening, after a shift that dragged through inventory audits and sidelong stairs, they drove to the marshes, the truck's headlights carving tunnels through the dusk. Ellis unpacked a blanket and lantern, but her movements were clipped, the cider poured with hands that shook. They sat in silence at first, the water's whisper mocking their fracture, bullfrogs croaking a dirge. "You should have let it go," Ellis said finally, staring at the horizon where land met sky in indistinct blur. "Talking to him. Now they think you're in on it." Diana bristled, the accusation stinging. "In on what? Loving you? That's not a crime." Ellis whirled, eyes flashing. "To them it is. And you're blind to it, Dee, still playing the Hayes daughter, tiptoeing so you don't scuff the family silver." The fight escalated, words hurled like marsh mud. Diana accusing Ellis of recklessness, of dragging her into shadows she'd only glimpsed. Ellis retorting with cowardice, the safety of denial a cage Diana clung to. "You think this is easy?" Ellis shouted, voice cracking over the wind. "Watching you smile at those setups, pretending I don't exist? I ruin your dates because the alternative, losing you altogether, is worse than hell." Diana reeled, the rawness stripping her defenses. "And what about losing you to this town? To their hate?" They collapsed into each other then, fury dissolving into sobs, bodies entwined on the blanket as the lantern flickered low, the reconciliation of fierce reclaiming under the indifferent stars. But external pressures mounted, inexorable as the tide. Clara invited Diana to dinner midweek, the Hayes table laden with roast chicken and collards, Harlan at the head carving with ritual precision. Conversation skirted the mill's woes until Clara's fork paused, her eyes soft with concern. "Heard about Ellis's notice. Shame she's sharp. But maybe it's for the best. Town's changing, but not that fast." Harlan grunted agreement, adding, "Stick to your lane, girl. We've got enough storms." Diana's appetite fled, the food ash on her tongue, their words a velvet glove over iron fist. Driving home, tears blurring the taillights, she veered to the river house, bursting through the door to find Ellis at the kitchen table, resume in hand, the lamplight carving hollows under her eyes. "I can't do half measures," Diana declared, dropping her keys with a clatter. "Fight with me, or let me fight alone." Ellis rose, the paper crumpling in her fist. "Alone? That's what got us here." They mapped strategy in the witching hour. Appeals to the union rep, a petition disguised as efficiency plea, late-night emails to sympathetic vendors. It bound them tighter, this shared rebellion, but cracks spiderwebbed beneath. Diana's flinch at a neighbor's wave. Ellis's silences growing longer, heavier. The breaking point came at the town hall meeting, called to address mill cuts amid economic murmurs. The auditorium buzzed with flannel-shirt workers and pearl-clutching wives, the air electric with grievance. Diana spoke first, voice steady as she outlined retention plans, Ellis flanking her like a sentinel. Applause rippled, tentative, but as questions turned pointed. "What about morale issues? Distractions?" A voice from the back rows slurred with beer and bigotry. "Like that sales gal and her persuasions. Ruining good folk." Murmur swelled to a wave, eyes swiveling to Ellis, who stood frozen, color draining from her face. Diana's hand found hers under the table, squeezing hard, but the damage etched deep. Outside, in the parking lot's sodium glow, Ellis shattered. Fists pounding the truck hood, curses tearing from her throat like shrapnel. "See? This is what I bring." Diana pulled her close, rain starting to fall in fat drops, mingling with tears. "We bring. Together." But as they drove away, wipers slashing the downpour, Diana felt the fault line widen. Love's foundation trembling under the onslaught of a world unyielding. Spring thawed Eldridge reluctantly, dogwoods blooming pink against the river's swell, but the chill lingered in hearts hardened by winter's toll. The town hall fallout rippled outward, petitions ignored, alliances fraying like old rope. Ellis's layoff held, her final shift a quiet amputation, packing boxes amid indifferent farewells, Diana hovering like a ghost, their goodbye kiss stolen in the storage room, tasting of salt and severance. "This isn't the end," Diana whispered, but Ellis's eyes, dulled by defeat, held no such certainty. "Ends are just beginnings we don't see coming." Ellis found work at a feed store in Brunswick, the commute a daily gauntlet of backroads and resentment. Her absence at the mill a void Diana filled with overtime and overthinking. Mornings blurred into audits, evenings into solitary dinners where the TV's chatter drowned unspoken longings. Texts bridged the gap. Ellis's wry observations on cow auctions, Diana's tales of Whitaker's latest edict, but distance bred doubt, the miles amplifying echoes of that night. The slurs, the stares, the way Harlan's silence at breakfast had thickened like grits left too long. Clara noticed first, her Sunday calls laced with probes. "You seem adrift, honey. That Brunswick boy's still in the picture." Diana deflected with lies about deadlines, but guilt gnawed. A betrayal compounded when she spotted Ellis's truck at the Driftwood one Friday, the bar's lights spilling onto wet pavement after a squall. Inside, the air hung heavy with fry oil and regret, pool cues cracking like bones. Ellis sat at the corner table, nursing a whiskey with a stranger. A woman from the co-op, tattoos snaking up her arm, laughter spilling easy as Diana's stomach knotted. She approached under pretense of coincidence, sliding onto the stool, the wood sticky under her palms. "Fancy meeting you here," she said, voice aiming for light, landing strained. Ellis's surprise flickered to wariness, the stranger excusing herself with a lingering touch on Ellis's shoulder that burned Diana like acid. "Just blowing off steam," Ellis explained, swirling her glass. "Lena's harmless old friend." But the casualness stung, a mirror to Diana's own sabotage dates, the irony bitter on her tongue. Harmless? Or convenient? The words escaped sharper than intended, jealousy uncoiling like a snake. The argument brewed low, voices pitched under the jukebox's wail. Diana accusing Ellis of fleeing, Ellis countering with exhaustion, the mill's rejection a scar still raw. "You think I want this?" Ellis hissed, leaning close, breath whiskey warm. "Pushing away to protect what's left? You're the one still there, playing safe." Diana recoiled, the truth ablaid. She had stayed, petitioning quietly, lunching with Whitaker, hoping proximity would soften the blow. Safe? This town's eating me alive. They parted in the lot, rain sheeting down, Ellis's taillights vanishing into the night, leaving Diana soaked and solitary, the bar door slamming like finality. Betrayal's seed took root in the days that followed. Diana threw herself into work, volunteering for the auxiliary spring bazaar. Her mother's praise a hollow bomb, but whispers pursued. A coworker cornering her by the copier. Heard Ellis landed on her feet, good riddance. The words casual venom. At home Harlan's health faltered, a cough that lingered, doctor's visits hushed, and Clara's worry turned inward, her eyes searching Diana's face for cracks. We're family, Dee. No secrets. The pressure built, a dam straining against flood. It burst at the bazaar. Tents pitched on the green under a sky bruised with clouds. Diana manned the bake sale, Clara beside her, the air sweet with lemon bars and lies, until Ellis appeared at the edge of the crowd. Uninvited, unannounced, her presence a magnet drawing stares. She approached slow, a wrapped pie in hand, her smile tentative. Peace offering, she said, setting it down, the crust golden as apology. Clara stiffened, her greeting cool, but Diana felt the thaw in Ellis's gaze, the pull inexorable. They slipped away to the oak grove, branches arching like cathedral vaults, the bazaar's hum distant. I miss you, Ellis admitted, back against bark, leaves rustling overhead. Every damn mile. Diana closed the gap, hands framing Ellis's face, the kiss a dam breaking, fierce, forgiving, laced with the ache of absence. It deepened under the dappled light, bodies pressing close, the world reduced to heat and heartbeat. But interruption shattered it. Clara's voice calling, sharp with alarm, footsteps crunching leaves. She emerged from the path, face ashen, eyes widening at the tableau. Hands linked, lips swollen, the evidence undeniable. Diana Hayes, she breathed, hand to chest as if warding off faint. What in God's name? The confrontation unfolded in staccato. Accusations of deception, pleas for understanding, Clara's tears carving tracks through powder. This isn't you. It's her poisoning what's good. Ellis stepped forward, voice steady. It's love, ma'am. Plain and true. But Clara recoiled, turning to Diana with betrayal's raw edge. Choose then. Us or this. Diana's world tilted, the grove spinning, Ellis's hand slipping from hers as Clara stormed back, the pie left crumbling on the grass. Alone they clung, Ellis's whisper fierce. Don't let her win. But Diana drove home in turmoil, Harlan's truck in the drive a sentinel, the house lights warm yet forbidding. Inside, Clara waited, Bible open on the table like evidence, her ultimatum delivered in hushed tones. Therapy, distance from Ellis, a return to normalcy or estrangement's cold embrace. Sleep evaded Diana that night, the ceiling a map of fissures, Harlan's cough echoing from down the hall like accusation. Dawn brought resolve fractured. A text to Ellis, need time, the words a severance she regretted instantly. Days blurred into avoidance, the mill a minefield of memories, bizarre gossip swirling like pollen. Ellis's messages tapered from pleas to silence, the feed store job a barrier Diana erected herself. The nadir came unbidden. A package at her door, Ellis's handwriting on the label. A box of ledgers from their overtime nights, annotated with inside jokes and margins, a note tucked inside. Our story's not done. But I won't beg. Diana clutched it, sobs racking her frame on the porch, the neighborhood's curtains twitching like judgments. Betrayal's mirror turned inward. She had chosen safety, the haze mantle over heart's command, the cost a hollowness that echoed louder than any mill whistle. In the quiet that followed, Diana wandered the river alone. Waters flow a mocking constancy, the weight of fracture pressing her to reconsider the chains she wore so willingly. Summer scorched Eldridge into submission, the sun baking the earth until cracks spiderwebbed the clay roads, mirroring the fissures in Diana's resolve. The mill churned on, quotas met through sheer attrition, but Diana moved through days like a specter, smiles mechanical, ledgers balanced with hands that trembled. Harlan's cough worsened, X-rays revealing shadows in his lungs, the doctor's grave nod sending Clara into a spiral of casseroles and prayer chains. God's testing us, she murmured one evening, folding linens with ritual precision, her eyes avoiding Diana's. The rift between them yawned, Conversations clipped to banalities, the unspoken choice a specter at every meal. Ellis's absence was a phantom limb, aching in quiet moments. The empty stool at lunch, the river house dark on night drives, her texts unanswered until they ceased altogether. Diana told herself it was mercy, space to mend, but regret festered, blooming into sleepless nights where dreams replayed the grove's kiss, Clara's horror twisting into her own. She threw herself into family duty, driving Harlan to treatments in Brunswick, where the hospital's sterile halls smelled of antiseptic and second chances. Yet each pass by the feed store twisted the knife, Ellis's truck a taunt in the lot, her silhouette glimpsed through plate glass, laughing with customers, life persisting without her. Crisis crested mid-July, Harlan's admission stark under the emergency room's glare. Stage 3, treatable but tenacious, the prognosis a tightrope of hope and hazard. Diana sat vigil in the dim-lit room, his hand frail in hers, the beeps of monitors a metronome to his labored breaths. "Proud of you, girl," he rasped, eyes glassy with morphine. "Always have been. Don't let fear steal your light." The words pierced, a dying man's absolution, stirring the sediment of truths long buried. Clara hovered outside, her rosary clicking like accusations, but in that sterile intimacy Diana confessed fragments. Not the whole but enough. "There's someone, Dad. Someone who sees me true." Harlan squeezed her hand, weak but sure. "Then hold on. Life's too short for shadows." Discharge brought fragile normalcy. Harlan homebound with oxygen tanks humming like sentinels. Clara's vigilance a fortress Diana navigated on tiptoe. But the elder Hayes's words fermented, catalyzing a reckoning. One sweltering afternoon, with the house asleep under fans' lazy whirl, Diana slipped out, driving the backroads to Brunswick, heart hammering like the pistons under the hood. The feed store loomed, sacks stacked like barricades, and there was Ellis tallying inventory in the aisle, her tank top damp with sweat, hair tied back in a careless knot. Diana parked across the street, watching through the windshield's haze, the distance a coward's veil. Ellis glanced up, freezing mid-count, their eyes locking across the asphalt. Shock hurt, a flicker of longing that bridged the gap. She emerged slow, wiping hands on her jeans, the bell tinkling like a warning. "D," she said, voice neutral as the summer air. But her stance betrayed her, arms crossed like armor. "What brings you?" Diana stepped out, the heat pressing close, words tumbling unpolished. "I was wrong. Hiding, choosing easy over us. But Dad, it's changing everything. I can't lose you too." Ellis's facade cracked, tears welling unshed. "You already did." That silence? It said enough. The rawness gutted Diana, prompting a flood. Apologies for the ghosting, the bizarre fallout, the fear that had chained her. "I thought I was protecting them, us. But it's poison, Ellis. This half-life." They talked in the truck's cab, engine off, the lot emptying around them, voices overlapping in catharsis. Ellis's new routines, the loneliness masked by busyness, Diana's family vigil, the epiphany in the hospital's hush. "He told me to hold my light," Diana finished, hand reaching across the console. Ellis took it, tentative, the contact a spark reigniting embers. Reconnection was tentative, a bridge rebuilt plank by plank. Coffee in Brunswick dives, walks along the salt marshes where gulls wheeled like witnesses. Ellis shared her own scars. A letter from an aunt in Vermont, offering escape to a queer collective up north, temptation laced with guilt. "Part of me wants to run," she admitted, skipping stones across the inlet, ripples widening. "But leaving you? That's the real flight." Diana pulled her close, the wind tugging at their clothes, resolve hardening. "Then stay. We'll face it square." Emboldened, Diana broached the Hayes hearth, waiting for an evening when Harlan dozed and Clara chopped onions for gumbo. The kitchen steamy with bay leaves. "Mom," she began, perched on a stool, voice steady despite the quake. "About the bazaar. Ellis, she's not poison. She's mine." Clara's knife paused, eyes lifting slow, a war of grief and grace etching her features. "Mine how?" The question demanded truth, and Diana gave it. Love's shape, its depth, the joy eclipsed by fear. Silence stretched, broken only by the pot's simmer, until Clara set the knife down, hands trembling. "I raised you to be brave, not this. Reckless." But her voice wavered, cracking on unshed sobs. "What about your father? The town?" Harlan's awakening shifted the tide. Wheelchair-bound in the den, he listened as Diana wheeled him to the porch, Ellis waiting on the steps, pie in hand, ironic echo of the bazaar. His gaze appraised, stern yet softening. "Ford," he greeted, extending a hand. "Heard you got the boot. Unfair that." Ellis shook it, grip firm. "Life's full of unfair, sir." Conversation meandered. Mill politics, river lore, until Harlan cut through. "Dee says you're family now. That true?" Ellis met his eyes, unflinching. "More than blood if she'll have me." Harlan nodded, weary wisdom in his sigh. "Then have her. And tell that town to go hang." Clara's thaw was slower, a series of tense suppers where silverware clinked like judgments, but cracks appeared. A tentative question about Ellis's favorite recipe, a shared pew at church where hands brushed in silent accord. The town, however, bristled, gossip at the Piggly Wiggly, averted eyes at the post office. But Diana and Ellis walked arm-in-linked, heads high, the Mills parking lot a stage for their quiet revolution. Culmination came at Harlan's memorial, autumn leaves carpeting the cemetery like a final quilt, the service a tapestry of eulogies and hymns. Diana stood graveside, Ellis's hand in hers, Clara on the other side, the circle unbroken. As dirt pattered on the casket, Harlan's words echoed, "Hold your light." In the reception's hush amid deviled eggs and condolences, Diana felt the weight lift, love's truth a beacon against encroaching dusk. Yet shadows lingered, the Mills' looming closure, Eldridge's stubborn pulse, but in Ellis's gaze Diana saw possibility, a future forged not in hiding but in bold strokes. Autumn gilded Eldridge in fleeting splendor, maples aflame along the river bends, but winter's approach whispered of endings and renewals intertwined. Harlan's passing left a hush over the Hayes home, rooms echoing with absence, Clara moving through chores with a quiet ferocity that masked her grief. Diana shouldered the funeral's logistics, her father's wishes etched in a will that surprised. A bequest to the food pantry where Ellis volunteered, a note tucked in the envelope, "For the fighter who saw my girl's spark. Take care of her." Reading it aloud to Ellis on the porch swing. Dusk settling like a shawl, Diana's voice broke, the legacy a bridge across divides. Clara's transformation deepened in the weeks that followed. She invited Ellis to Sunday dinners unprompted, setting an extra place with deliberate care, conversations veering from recipes to tentative inquiries about Ellis's youth. Must have been tough, without a mama's guiding hand. Ellis answered honestly, her stories of hollows and hardships met not with pity but understanding, Clara's own widowhood a shared vernacular of endurance. One evening, over chess pie cooling on the sill, Clara pulled Diana aside in the kitchen, flour-dusted hands clasping hers. "Your father, he knew, said you deserved joy whatever shape it took. I was scared, Dee, of losing you to something I didn't understand." Tears traced her wrinkles, absolution in their salt. But love? That's the only inheritance worth passing. Emboldened by this mending, Diana and Ellis ventured public. A booth at the Driftwood, hands laced atop the scarred table, the bartender's nod casual as pouring drafts. A square dance at the Harvest Revival, skirts swirling in defiance of stares, laughter bubbling free. The town grumbled, letters to the Eldridge Gazette decrying moral decay, pews shifting at First Baptist, but cracks appeared in the facade. A mill worker's quiet congrats in the aisle, the auxiliary president's pie at the next fair bearing Ellis's name tag. Change crept incremental like the river carving canyons over eons. The mill's closure loomed as the true tempest, Whitaker's announcement rippling through shifts like a shockwave. Automation's blade falling swift, Eldridge's lifeblood severed. Layoff packets distributed in the conference room, faces ashen under fluorescence, Diana's included, her accounts team gutted. Ellis, from her Brunswick perch, drove back that night, finding Diana on the riverbank, stones skipping across water turned to mercury in twilight. "What now?" Diana asked, voice small against the current's rush. Ellis sat beside her, arm around shoulders, the contact anchor. "Now? We build. Together." They plotted in the river house, maps spread amid takeout cartons. Job listings in Savannah's tech hubs, Vermont's collectives calling like sirens, or staying to fight union drives, artisan co-ops from shuttered looms. Ellis's aunt's offer resurfaced, a cottage in the Green Mountains, land for gardens and goats, a community where love bloomed unchecked. Escape, Ellis mused, tracing the route with a finger. But is it running? Diana leaned into her, the fire crackling low. It's choosing life. Ours. Decision crystallized over Harlan's old fishing rod, mended on the wall. A symbol of persistence. Diana tendered notice, Clara's blessing a hug fierce as vows. Go where the light leads but come back for pie. Packing unfolded in montage. Boxes labeled with futures, the Hayes porch farewell tear-streaked but triumphant. Eldridge shrinking in the rearview as they merged onto a 95 North. Vermont unfolded in crisp relief. Rolling hills quilted in frost-kissed fields. The cottage a haven of clapboard and chimney smoke. Ellis's aunt a wiry woman with stories etched in laugh lines. They settled into rhythm. Diana freelancing audits remote. Ellis tending a pottery wheel in the co-op. Evenings by the hearth where hands wove tales of survival. The town newsletter arrived sporadic, whispers of Eldridge's adaptation. Microbrewery in the old mill. Pride flags fluttering tentative at town hall. Proof that ripples endure. One winter solstice, snow blanketing the pines like forgiveness. They stood on the frozen pond, breaths clouding in the chill. Ellis pulled a ring from her pocket, simple silver engraved with river coordinates. A question posed not in knees bent but eyes locked. Every date you went on I ruined because I couldn't bear the loss. Now, marry the ruined. Marry me. Laughter mingled with yes, the kiss sealing against the cold. A vow etched in starlight. Years layered like sediment. A commitment ceremony under Vermont oaks. Clara traveling north with pie in tow. Eldridge visits where old foes nodded wary respect. A life woven from threads of struggle and grace. Diana reflected often on the hook that started it. The sabotaged evenings, the ache of realization. Grateful for the coworker who shattered illusions to reveal truth. In a world of norms and no's, their love stood testament. Human, flawed, unbreakable. The message lingered, a quiet thunder. Freedom isn't granted but claimed, one defiant heart at a time.